Alright, question 13 for Practice Provincial B. This marks the first question where you can actually use a calculator. However, this question probably doesn't actually require one. Alright, so 13 tells us marbles are placed in the jar one at a time. Which graph below best represents the total mass of the jar and marbles as the marbles are added? And we're given sort of 4 graphs. Okay, A, B, C, and D. Alright, a couple things to note here. We're placing single marbles inside the jar one at a time. This means that we're not placing continuous. So we are dealing one marble at a time. One marble at a time. Okay. This means that the graph, the total mass, is not going to be continuous. So mass of the jar and the marbles is not continuous. Okay, mass not continuous. Okay. And recognizing this allows us to immediately ignore these two answers, because graph B and graph D both show continuous graphs. And because we're placing one marble at a time, we know that it's not going to be a continuous increase in mass, because we're not placing like fractions of a marble or half fractions of a marble or so on. They're one whole marble at a time, which means the mass goes up by a specific amount every time. Right, so that leaves us with either A or C. Now, the question asks us the total mass of the jar and the marbles. So if there were no marbles, we would still have the mass of the jar, which means that at 0 marbles, so 0 marbles would be on this graph, would be here, and on this graph 0 marbles would be here. At 0 marbles, we would still have the mass of the jar. And which means, unless the jar is massless, and I don't know if any of you guys have ever seen a massless jar, the jar would have some mass, which means that the answer cannot be A, because in A, at 0 marbles, we have a mass of 0. So the answer has to be C. And we can check. For number 13, the answer is C. And again, that's because we're dealing with the mass of the jar and the marbles. And at 0 marbles, the jar still has some mass.